Before I begin today's video, there's something that I wish to clarify. In my previous video, I mentioned that I had a large lore video in the works. I simply wish to clarify that this video is not the one I was referring to. I will let you know when that video does arrive. Also, major spoiler alerts for the Automatron DLC of Fallout 4. When you finally discover the location of the Mechanist in the Automatron DLC, which is a pre-war General Atomics factory, the sole survivor goes to said factory to confront the Mechanist, and when they do, it is the Mechanist that accuses the sole survivor of terrorizing the people of the wasteland and claiming that her robots have been protecting said wastelanders from the sole survivor. After fending off against several waves of more of the Mechanist robots, the sole survivor can engage in a dialogue with the Mechanist. From this dialogue, we learn that the Mechanist was actually trying to use her robots to protect the people of the Commonwealth, and it is also possible that we can learn the Mechanist's real name, which is Isabel Cruz. The sole survivor can then correct Isabel Cruz, saying that the Robo-Brains were misinterpreting orders, interpreting helping as killing for some weird reason that I myself still do not get, which has led to the robots killing the innocent people of the wasteland, and that the sole survivor is not the bad guy, he is the one that is protecting the people of the wasteland from the Mechanist. If you pass a few speech checks, she'll become convinced way more easily and the dialogue becomes way shorter, but the end result is all the same. She does ultimately realise that what the sole survivor says is true. She takes all the responsibility and all the guilt for the innocent lives she has taken and may have taken, but still asks the sole survivor to spare her, and after that point, you as the player have a choice. From that point, you, the player, have a choice, either to spare her or to kill her. Either way, you get the Mechanist layer as a settlement as an endgame reward, in which case, if you chose the former option, Isabel will remain as a merchant and a settler, and Ada approves of either option. However, if you choose to spare Isabel, Ada does admit that if she was in your shoes, she probably would not be able to do the same. The practical option is to spare Isabel Cruz, especially if you're into settlement building, because I forgot to mention, she is specifically a junk merchant. But which is the moral option? That is the subject we will be discussing in today's video. Now, first off, I don't think there is an immoral option. I do believe it is moral both to spare Isabel Cruz because it is merciful, and to kill Isabel Cruz because it is justice. But I don't believe both options are equally moral. I do believe one option is moral than the other, and that option, I believe, is to kill her. And this is why. Let's start with the objective truth, that Isabel Cruz has caused the deaths of several innocents. And in our own universe, in our own legal system, it is a matter of debate as to whether or not capital punishment is a just punishment. But in the Fallout universe, that's besides the point. Because in Fallout, the only justice system there is vigilante justice. Which means, in this context, capital punishment is really the only option if you want to choose the just option. You could defend Isabel Cruz by saying that she didn't intend to kill any innocent people, her robots were simply meant to fend off raiders and other threats. Which is a valid point, but there are two things to that which I wish to say. The first one is, ignorantia juris non excusat. That statement is a legal term. It is Latin for ignorance of the law excuses not. So basically my point is that her ignorance of her offences is not an excuse. Ignorantia juris non excusat means something slightly different. Now in our own legal system, ignorantia juris non excusat means something slightly different. It refers more to the ignorance of the law that makes a criminal offence, rather than the ignorance of the offence itself. But the logic still ultimately applies. Now, there are several reasons as to why ignorance may not be used as an excuse. In some cases, it can be due to the fact that it is likely that they did know about the offence, which in this case isn't the case. Another is willful blindness, where one chooses to be ignorant, which is something that we'll talk about momentarily. And another possible reason is the one that Aristotle once gave, that said ignorance is, in and of itself, dangerous. And of course, there is the very black and white reason. Not knowing that she killed innocent people doesn't change the fact that she did. In this scenario, I find that the two latter ones are the ones that most apply. So ultimately, no, Isabel Cruz cannot use ignorance as an excuse. And besides, I don't believe Isabel Cruz was completely ignorant of the possibility that this might happen. Well, what do I mean by that? Well, I do certainly believe that Isabel Cruz certainly did not realize that these deaths were taking place. In fact, it's objectively the case that she didn't. Because if you look through the terminals in the Mechanis layer, you see that her intention was to protect wastelanders, even feeling guilt for killing raiders during one of her tests. And there's even this one entry where she says she modified the robots in order to ensure that they distinguish raider from settler. She does say that this modification will mean that less raiders will be fought against, but she'd rather kill less raiders than be responsible for the death of innocent settlers. So she was certainly blind to what her robots were doing, but I would argue that she was willfully blind. You see, willful blindness, also known as intentional ignorance, is another legal term in which an offender is voluntarily ignorant of the offence they've committed or the law that makes said offence an offence in order to use that as a defence. Now, you may think I'm grasping at straws by describing Isabel Cruz with this term, but hear me out. When the sole survivor tells Isabel Cruz, the Mechanist, that her robots were killing innocents due to misinterpretation of orders, she says that it must have been the Robobrains. When the sole survivor asks more about said Robobrains, she says that she wipes the minds of the Robobrains in order to rewire them into following orders, but she says that it is possible for their minds to become corrupted. So my point is that she does somewhat admit that she did know about a possible threat towards the people of the Commonwealth. So although she didn't know about the attacks themselves, she did know about the possibility that these attacks could have happened. And so ultimately, all that is why I find the most moral ending to this questline is the option of vigilante justice, punishing Isabel Cruz for her crimes. Again, I don't think it's immoral to spare her, but I do think it's less moral. But I understand that may be an unpopular opinion. If you disagree or have anything else to add, feel free to use the comments section to explain those opinions, and I will see you guys in the next one.